Welcome back to Worthington Motor Railway. And today we're going to look at some more Thomas and Friends additions from Bachmann. So I recently visited my model railway store in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they've added quite a few Thomas and Friends things. I noticed a big sign as I walked in the door advertising the Lionel Thomas, and then I see there's quite a big display for the Bachmann Thomas and Friends. I then remembered that about this time last year, my wife bought me Spencer. I'm kind of a purist when it comes to the railway series. So much as I was happy to receive Spencer, it's not really on my list of Thomas stuff. But when I was in the store a couple of weeks ago, I thought maybe I'd add some stuff. And I'm going to talk a little bit about James. I have been looking for a red James for some time. I have James in the bumblebee stripes, but at some point red Jameses were a little bit like rocking horse dung in as much as you just couldn't find them. But they appeared again, so I'm working on the principle that Bachmann built some more red James. What they also had was an Edward, and so I thought I'd grab an Edward, and then a couple of trucks, the Sodor Scrap and the Sodor Salt truck there. So we'll open them up, we'll have a look at them, we'll run them on the layout. I think we know from past experience that they're not exactly what we call super detail, but they're fun either way. So the worst part about this is always opening up these blister packs. They're a pain to open, and basically once they're open, they're kind of done. James was a new engine who lived at a station at the other end of the line. He had 2 small wheels in front and 6 driving wheels behind. They weren't as big as Gordon's, and they weren't as small as Thomas's. So James first appeared in the 1946 book, Thomas the Tank Engine. He was named after James Furze, a friend of the publisher's son. He was originally painted black, and then he became red and appeared so in subsequent books. He's based on the L and YR Class 28 and 060 mixed traffic tender engine, although I don't understand why he's a 260 if he's based on an 060, but apparently that's what actually happened. So there's a number of books that James appears in, and he's he's quite a character in terms of the engines. And as we saw before, he ended up painted wasp stripes. He started out life as black and then got repainted red. But anyway, this is the Bachmann James, as is typical of these models. Really, nothing that I can really say about these is kind of interesting or different. They're very, very basic. They're very toy-like. And I think they're designed for young kids to be able to play with. But let's just take a look at James. I mean, the cab is just non-existent. And there's a little bit of detail on the back end there. But there's James. And of course, as always, we have the face, and James definitely has that kind of cheeky look to his face. So there we have James, the red engine. We actually check on the history of this. The Reverend Audrey had two models of James on his double-O gauge model railway. The first, from the 1950s, was based on a 260 Glasgow and South Western Railway locomotive, the Austrian Goods, as designed by Peter Drummond. And this is the design that Audrey originally intended to use for James. The model was red with yellow lining. But Audrey later noticed it was sent away in the 1980s for a new motor and chassis and came back completely transformed. His second model of James was based on a 1960s Tryon Johnson 3F 060, a conversion which Hornby used for the production version of their model of James several decades later. So this is obviously based upon the earlier James being the 260 as opposed to the 060. So here we have Edward the Blue Engine, and Edward was based on a heavily modified Sharp, Stewart and Company larger Seagull K2 class. So Edward was a mixed traffic engine, and he was highly respected on the Northwestern Railway. And having the number 2, he shared duties with Boco, and Edward governs his own branch line that stretches from Wellsworth to Brendan. It's one of the oldest engines on the railway, and despite that, he was an essential part of the network for many years, and his hard work, dedication never waned, nor did his love for the railway. And interestingly, at some point, Edward managed to convince the Vicar of Wellsworth to buy Trevor, the old traction engine. So he had a number of different things in his life that really helped others. Interesting fact about Edward: he had the honor of being the first character created for the railway series in 1942, and he's the only engine whose crew has been named, with his driver and fireman known as Charlie Sand and Sidney Haver, respectively. So let's take a quick look at Edward here. And again, nothing spectacular. He does have more of a cab there in terms of some detail than some of the other locos do. And of course, we have that wonderful face right here on the front of the loco. And here we have a couple of random wagons, trucks, Sodor Scrap and Sodor Salt, obviously based on some pretty old moldings from Bachmann, but in terms of railway series stuff, they will look fine running along behind some of the locomotives that we're looking at today. So Spencer, of course, is not in the original railway series, and Spencer is based on an A4, a silver streamlined A4, And supposedly, he's privately owned by the Duke and Duchess of Boxford, making him a cousin of Gordon. And his journeys often bring him to the island of Sodor, accompanied by his owners. And one time, Spencer engaged in a race with Edward and held a significant lead for most of the competition. However, his vanity got the better of him and he dozed off while the Duke and Duchess stopped for pictures, allowing Edward to seize victory by reaching the summer house branch line first. So let's take a quick look at Spencer, A4 with no valances and a single chimney. Although I believe originally Spencer was supposed to have a double chimney, but well, in this particular case he doesn't. Has an interesting face. And here we see the model. Again, very limited detail. Does actually have a cab this time, as opposed to a no cab as we saw earlier with James. Although absolutely no detail in the cab. Some silver lining there. I think it's supposed to be something similar to the silver A4s, but really, again, not a lot of detail and kind of way too short for a real A4. As always, thanks for watching. Apologise for not having posted anything in a couple of weeks. I actually had a really bad cold, as you might have heard. I'm sorry my voice was a little kind of stumbly in the video, but I'm feeling much better now. So it'll be a couple of weeks again before I post anything, as I'm going off on vacation.
But we'll see you soon. And as always, ask you to subscribe if you haven't. Subscribe button to the top right, another video to the top left.